Reactive training systems.
Got another question the other day that was, again, talking about recovery. And this question has more to do with what do you do when you find yourself in the position of being overstressed or under-recovered? Should you eat more calories? Should you reduce your training volume? What's the best strategy? I thought this question was interesting, especially from the standpoint that the person asking it specifically mentioned eating more calories. I don't think that eating more calories is a very effective recovery strategy under most circumstances that a strength athlete's going to find themselves in. Unless you're in a severe caloric restriction, just simply eating more calories doesn't seem to impact recovery that much. Recently we did the Project Momentum where we had our lifters pushing down lots of volume, really high frequencies, and some of them were decided that they were going to cut, some of them were bulking up, and others were maintaining. And we didn't really see any sort of correlation with whether they were cutting and any sort of recovery. So I'm not sure that, at least for this group, we didn't have any sort of indication that most normal cutting programs affected recovery that much. Now, of course, if you take anything to an extreme, then you're going to get an extreme result. So if your diet is at an extreme, then recovery is going to be a problem. But if your diet is that extreme, then chances are just simply stopping the diet and increasing your calories so that you recover better is not really an option for you. So if dietary interventions are more or less not going to help you that much when it comes to recovery, what do we do if we find ourselves in this position of being overstressed, under-recovered? Well, the biggest thing that we can do is to shift our training volume, is to shift the stress that's coming as a result of the workload that we're under. That's typically the stress that we have the most control over in our lives, although if you can eliminate some other stressors, especially if they're significant, that will help you as well. But since training stress seems to be the one that most people tend to have the most control over, if you find yourself getting beat up, overtaxed from your training program, then the training program needs to reduce the level of work, at least in the short term, maybe in the mid to long term as well. It really depends on on how you're tolerating it, really. If this same standard workload is going to cause the same problem in the future, then you're going to need to tone down the overall workload that's included in the program. However, if it's not, if it's just kind of this one-time thing, you're going through a rough patch or whatever, then you might be able to get away with going back to your normal training program after you get recovered from this one bout. So modifying that is going to be your primary way to ensure that you're recovering. If you're just a little bit overreached, then just simply reducing the volume is going to be probably sufficient. If you find yourself getting pretty darn beat up, it might be helpful for you to reduce the frequency for a while as well. Having a couple more rest days in the program, complete rest days, gives you a break, gives you a physical break by reducing the overall work that you're doing, but it also gives you a big mental break, and that's huge. I know that we like to just pay lip service to the mental side of training. Everybody goes, oh yeah, it's important, but then we don't really do much with it. But here's one aspect where it's extremely important. The prospect of getting under a heavy barbell every day, or close to every day, or most days, or whatever you're doing, is taxing. It's taxing on you from a psychological perspective. And if you can include a couple more rest days in your program, even if the overall volume is fairly high, then that might help you. It's best when it's paired with a volume reduction as well, so that you're not just having one enormous, really hard workout followed by a bunch of rest days after that. I don't think that's a great strategy either. But at a certain point, you know, this volume reduction is going to need to be paired with something, and usually a frequency reduction is a nice way to reduce your overall stress. We have seen results from reducing intensity as well. We've had more than one client who, you know, is just telling us that they've got a gut feeling that even with the volume reduction, even with the frequency reduction, that, you know, first of all, they're not recovering well, and they've just got this feeling that if we reduce the working weights by about half, that they would feel better and recover better. At first, I was kind of resistant to that idea, but truth be told, we just kind of caved in and did it. You know, they were asking for it, so we're like, okay, we'll give it a shot and see how it works, and it works great. So there's something else going on at that level, and it might maybe a psychological reaction to getting under heavy weights, high RPE, high psychological arousal weights. That may be a component, and a more significant component for some people rather than others. So it's just another thing to keep in mind, but manipulating your volume and your frequency and sometimes your intensity is usually the best way to get at recovery issues when you're having them.
Reactive training systems.